Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode, we welcome Jordan Hart and David Ebeltoft to the podcast to talk The Cabinet. These two gentlemen are the writers of the series over at Syzygy Publishing at Image Comics. Issues 1, 2 are out. Issue 3 hits the shelf when this episode drops on April 10th. Check them out. Their trade paperback comes out in October, but this episode we chatted the book, the creating the book, the process behind it, all that stuff right here on the Capes and Tights podcast. But before you do, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky, as well as rate, review, subscribe, all those things over at podcasts at Spotify and Apple and wherever your podcasts are found. If you want the video portion of this, you can check out our website or visit our YouTube channel. Just search for Capes and Tights on YouTube. Yeah, I'm going to stop talking. Listen. Enjoy this episode with Jordan and David. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen. How are you?
Great. Good. Thanks for having us.
It's always unique when I it's harder to say when I am talking to two people. I'm like, how are you? And they're like, which one? Both of you.
Yes, we just telepathically communicate who should speak when. I'm kidding. That would be great, though. That would be great.
I will say that I have talked to people who are, it's like one person is like out of the creative team is the talker. Like they're the ones that do all the press and all this stuff. And then the other person's like, I have to do this because I'm told I have to do this. So at least you guys are both like going to be talkative people. So
yeah. I mean,
not the case.
Yeah. If you have a preference, I can be the miserable one that doesn't want to be here, and Jordan can just talk all the time. Do you want me to do that?
Or we could just switch halfway through. We could just
let's do that.
Switch.
Yeah.
I had
personality switch. Yeah.
Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev on, and Alex wasn't originally gonna be on and decided to come on at the same time to talk about Masterpiece over at Dark Horse. And he was like eating ice cream in it. And it was so funny because it was like so nonchalant, and he even said, he's like, yeah, I wasn't gonna come. I don't know why I'm here, but just not like mean, but like I guess I'm here. And Brian's like, what are you doing,
dude?
It was perfect, honestly.
I mean, I bet Jordan and I will be sipping. Jordan will be sipping tea. I'll be sipping coffee. But man, that's a baller move to do ice cream on a podcast.
I know.
Yeah. All right.
And he's like, I canceled plans to be here. I'm like, thanks. Makes for making me feel like I canceled plans of dinner. I could have gone to dinner. I was like, whatever. But I got to talk to him. But it was fun. I tell you that much. Those guys are great.
Yeah.
Not as great as these guys right here. Jordan and David, right? These are top people right here. You guys are both writing a comic or in the process of creating a comic called The Cabinet. But like, let's go back a little bit. Like, Jordan, obviously, those who don't know, you're Eisner nominated and Harvey nominated comic book writer as well. So you're in the comic book industry. But like, have you been a fan of comics since like a young child, or how did your comic book origin story kind of happen?
Yes, thank you. I love drawing since I was a little kid. But basically, as long as I can remember, there was a crayon or a colored pencil, I would be drawing. So my parents knew that. And I remember my dad had bought Death in the Family, where Robin dies, right? Which was like huge on the news. And he's like, he loved comics as a kid, but he wasn't really into them at that point. He's like, but they killed Robin. I got to get this. And he picked it up. And like a spark must have just went off when he was looking at it, like, oh, well, maybe, I would like this. So they took me into a comic book store, would have been 1989, because I could pick out any comic, and I got the graphic novel adaptation of Ghostbusters 2, because I loved Ghostbusters and I loved that thing. But it was really, that trade was more about my love of Ghostbusters, less about love of comics. And then, 2 years later, I think, whatever it was, I was at the grocery store with my mom, and I saw Jim Lee's X-Men #1 on the shelf, and it was the Cyclops, Wolverine, Iceman cover. And I was like, I was 6, my mind could not process it. And I remember I like walked up and like looked at like the first 3 pages. I like went back to my mom and was like, put the Cheerios back, put everything back. I won't eat for a week. Get this instead. And I was 6 years old. Jim Lee and the X-Men hooked me. And then shortly after, the animated series started. Yeah. But, at that point, that was really the first major comic I bought on my own. and was just in the stores ever since. Like every grass I could cut. I grew up in the north as well in Wisconsin, so only half the year. So trying to like cut as much grass as I could, but only spend half the money so I could buy comics in the off season, and recycling soda cans, whatever it took to get comic book money. So yeah, being here now and being an Image comic creator, I don't think I even would have imagined that back then, but it sure is pretty awesome.
That is awesome. I love how you mentioned Ghostbusters too, because I recorded it earlier in the day for an episode coming out a week prior. So we're gonna have that episode going to come out this week. This episode will come out next week. And in that we were talking, we reviewed Dick Tracy because Dick Tracy's coming out at Mad Cave this year. So we just talked about the movie though. And I give my buddy who owns the LCS in my area, my LCS. Loves Ghostbusters too. Like he swears by Ghostbusters too, and I'm always giving him a little bit of crap for it because he's trying to tell me it's just as good as Ghostbusters 1, and I'm like, it's not as bad as people say it is. It's definitely not as good as Ghostbusters 1. So I'm glad you pulled out a Ghostbusters 2 reference.
Totally.
That's excellent. That's wonderful. I love that,
Totally.
and I love how comics nowadays do cost as much as groceries. Like you mentioned, not returning the Cheerios. Like back then, it probably wasn't as bad, but now it's like $6 for a comic.
Yeah, I know. I mean, even I'm sure for all of us, for kids, it was kind of always like, do you want a comic or do you want a Snickers bar? Right. That was like the choice we kind of all had to make. And yeah, I wish, well, maybe Snickers bars are gonna get real inflated here over the next 2 years, and we'll have that choice again.
Well, cabinet number one is only $3.99. I'll give you guys credit on that. It is only $3.99. I'm not throwing that on the. I did like, was it Mark Miller that came up with a book recently at Image that he did $1.99, and on it was like, I'm doing $1.99 on this book just to screw with everybody, just to say, we're doing a book for $1.99.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I wish we could do it for cheaper, and Dave will talk about this too, but at least at $3.99, we try to cram as much into that $3.99 for the readers, like. Like this thing moves, like, and that's on purpose because there's a lot of competition out there. $3.99 is not, that's we got to make it worth your while. And still, as a reader, like when I buy a book for $4 and it's, I don't think it was worth $4. That's like the worst feeling, where it's like, I wanted some, still happy to support that LCS, obviously, but like I just want to like. We really want to make sure to give the value.
Exactly. But I will say though, like what I buy too many comic books, and my pull list is pretty big. And so when I get in there, I do a ratio. I always do it every time I go to checkout. I count what I have, and the ratio of $3.99 to $4.99 or higher books at the big two, and the ratio of $3.99 to $4.99 or higher books in independent. The ratio is way higher of the higher priced ones on the Marvel and DC side than it is independent. So independent creators are still trying their best to keep it at the $3.99, even though it's cutting into your well-being, and you guys trying to make a living at writing comics. It would be so much better for you guys to be able to charge $4.99. An extra dollar is a lot. But
a long way.
But you also potentially scare off potential people who don't know what the cabinet is or books that are similar to it is. So getting them in there at that lower price might, I say lower price. $3.99 is still $3.99, but it's they're worth it. I will say the cabinet's worth it. So there's that too. Okay. So you could have charged $4.99 and I would have.
All right. So thank you.
I'll send you $1. Okay, guys.
That can we use that pull quote on our trade paperback?
I would have paid more. I would have
$1 more.
Yeah.
I would have paid more. But
that'd be great.
That's awesome. So it seems like you've been into comic books a long time. So writing comics, I mean, it doesn't seem so far-fetched and so on and so forth on that sense. I mean, David, you're a screenwriter, so you're more on the visual, the moving pictures side of things. Have you been a comic book fan most of your life too?
So my on-ramp with comics, same time around Jordan. I'm a few years older than Jordan, but I got into the Punisher War Journal era.
Jim Lee, though, still Jim Lee, which is great.
Early 90s. And we were talking about where we should allocate our money as children. I was a huge baseball card collector, and I grew up in North Dakota, so our LCS was truly our baseball card shop, and the guy just happened to throw a pittance to all the comic book fans by carrying a few issues here and there. So it was me, should I buy a Topps 50%, baseball pack, or should I save that for a few weeks to get one Punisher war journal? So my war journal collection is like 17, 19, 24, 28, because I wasn't able to do it regularly. So I was a fan of that for a very long time, but I got swayed away, totally cheated on comics. I got really into science fiction, fantasy books, by novels, full-length novels with no pictures. That was my mistress throughout my high school years and throughout most of my 20s. And then in my late 20s, early 30s, I started to get back into it. And then when I met Jordan, he really brought me back into the sway because I missed that whole chunk. I missed basically almost all of Image. I missed like that narrative shift that indie comics were going on in the aughts, where Saga and Revival and some of those really, really great series were diving really, really deep. And I think series have dove really, really deep before that, but they just didn't hit that mainstream market where my baseball card shop owner would order them. So when I came back to the fold, I just sort of got rehooked, which was really, really great because I was like, wow, the narrative storytelling within this medium is so vast and so much more than I ever imagined. So I was really happy to sort of get brought back into the fold, and comics were very forgiving. They didn't mind that I cheated on them with Asimov and Dragonlance Chronicle books for many, many years, which is really, really sweet. But yeah, for the most part, I've always just loved visual storytelling, and the medium I did choose was film for the longest time because I'm a huge film fan, and it's one of those things where when I started to sort of, I'd say, shift more towards comics, not more, but just started to shift more of my storytelling to that medium. It was such a breath of fresh air for me. It was also way, way harder, I believe, to write for comics than it is to write for film. Some of the screenwriters listening might be shaking their heads right now, but it's such a condensed medium, and that's the beauty of it, sort of telling that story with one panel instead of 5-minute scene. So it was such a great challenge, and it was such a great sort of, there's a new way or a new campfire to tell a story around. And it's so cool because, some of the titles you guys have already mentioned on, the past few minutes, those are all just like cool little campfires that we're all invited to sit around. And so yeah, that's sort of my journey in a very large nutshell, like coconut shell. But yeah, that's why I'm here.
I mean, it's very surprising actually, and actually not, I would say not surprising, how many of creators have been on here have said they stepped away from comics for a number of years. There's like this moment we all potentially have that I even did it, doing this, on the side I had a gap where it was just like, yeah, maybe mine was more like I'm too cool for it. Like I can't be cool in like comics. And nowadays, like it's not cool. You're not cool unless you do like comic books or comic movies or things like that. Like, and so there is that gap that's there. And there's a similarity, and obviously you can speak to it more, David, than I can. But like between comic book writing and moving pictures or feature films or things like that, because there is a visual aspect of it that books don't have, novels don't have. So when you go into writing a comic book like this, there is still like, you can talk to your artist and be like, this is how I'd frame a shot up, or one of those things in that sense too. So there is that. I talk to some people who write books and then write comics, and they're like, yeah, that's definitely different. There's definitely a different, I'm on my own, I'm on an island here. I have to write this book, and what visuals are in it, I need to write into it. Whereas you guys do have the help from your artist on this too, which is phenomenal. I'll tell you that right now. The colors in this book are just, the only other one right now that has like this toe to toe with you is the trade paperback for True Cult from because of the, I don't know, do I have mine here? I have mine here. Yeah, this is great audio here. Is me looking for a comic on the shelf here. Is it because it's like, it's hard to even see on the screen. It's like, I designed beer labels as most of my job, and I didn't even know you could print in this color this well. Like I'm just looking at it. I saw it on the shelf. I'm like, if there was any way when you guys have your trade come out, I think it's October-ish, that could be on this bright of a vibrant color.
I know it's hard. Liana's great. She is so great. Yeah,
but I was like, saw it. I like, it stands out. I'm like, they probably sold copies of this book just because it's like, what is this? I need this. It's bright pink. But no, the colors in it are amazing, and the visuals of it are wonderful in the cabinet. And I'm so so pumped that Melissa over at Don't Hide sent me some advanced issues before, and we were supposed to talk a little while ago. So yes, we are mid release of the cabinet, and which we'll get into here in a second too. But you mentioned David, when you met Jordan, how did you guys get together? Like, how was this team of a writing team come together in the first place? Either one of you can speak on that. It doesn't matter.
Jordan, I can't remember who answered it last.
You go. You can take it.
Should I go? Okay, I'll pass it off to you.
Okay.
So yeah, during this time when I met Jordan, man, maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, through a mutual friend who I was working with. We were sort of working in the independent film world together. Jordan and his buddy were writing a screenplay. And through mutual friends, the screenplay made it my way. Jordan and his buddy were like, yo, you're writing screenplays. You have a year or two more quote unquote professional knowledge than we do. Would you give us notes? And I said, heck yeah, I'll give you notes. So I read the screenplay, super, super funny. I gave them notes. And since that point, Jordan and I just sort of struck up an online friendship. We're sort of like modern day pen pals. We would just email each other. Jordan would be like, yo, check out this book, or check out this graphic novel, or check out this cool little comic, or check out this script that I want to make into a cool little comic. And I'd do the same. I'd be like, yo, check out this crazy ass film, or check out my crazy ass script for a hopeful crazy ass film. And we did that for a very long time. I mean, I don't know, maybe 6 years, Jordan.
Yeah.
And so it was cool because we bonded over a lot of things. We're both from the Midwest. We both went to art school. We both saved our money for comics, and then I later saved them for things I cheated on comics with. And, we both just sort of had these like mutual fandoms, mutual appreciations, and mutual work ethics, which I think if you've had other collaborators on here as well, you have to sort of meet those people that match that passion and match that drive. Because we've all been in those group projects in high school or maybe beyond. And sometimes one person carries that and the other three just sort of coast off of his or her coattails. So it was really, really great to sort of find all those commonalities with Jordan. And just also, we were good friends. And so we were able to work together. And so in 2018-ish, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Jordan. In 2018-ish, we were talking about collaborating on something. We thought, we're like, hell, this is the time. Jordan had a few great comics come out. I had a few films come out, and we just wanted to do something fun together. And so we sort of were exchanging ideas back and forth, but we couldn't really find the right one that fit for like both of us. Jordan had a great idea, but it was almost like a little too farther along, right? So it's like, well, that should just be Jordan's idea. I'd have an idea, but it just, wasn't hitting in terms of whatever needs to be hit. So yeah, Jordan, I'm going to pass it to you and your wonderfully fateful day at the Getty Museum.
Yeah. So I live in greater Los Angeles now. Grew up in Wisconsin, live out here now, and it was a heat wave. And my wife and I were living about 9 blocks from the beach, which is awesome, but none of those apartments have air conditioning. So when the heat wave comes, it gets like our thermostat in our apartment, our thermostat would hit like 91. Like it was crazy. So I mean, we got window air conditioning units, but like if we had left and didn't. So yeah, we went to the Getty Museum, which is in Brentwood, Bel Air, and we were walking around, and this is right when David and I were trying to think of ideas. And sure enough, I walk into one building, and there, sitting on this huge display table in a giant display case, is a cabinet. So like it exists. It's a real thing, and it's this 3 foot, 4 foot display cabinet that has 4 sides, tons of hidden drawers. It's got oil paintings in it, gold, like ivory, bone accents. It just looks haunted. It just looks creepy. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, that's the idea right there. Like this is crazy from the 16th or from the 17th century. This is nuts. As David mentioned, and we can get into this later, but I think one of the reasons the cabinet is so visual and everything is that we are both writers now, but we both went to art school. So like, the cabinet is the first book I haven't colored. Chiara colors it. All my other comic books I've colored, and Dave will do sketches. So like we're very visual in how we write, which is I think evident in the cabinet. And I just sent Dave a picture. I was like, I think this is going to be our idea. and he loved it too. So then we had what they call a bake off, which is where basically he came up with his take on what kind of story we could have with the cabinet. I came up with mine. They were much different. Mine was more like a Conjuring type horror story. Dave's was what we have now, a supernatural adventure story. And I was like, that's what we're doing. And he's like, no, we can. He was very gracious. Like, we can try to see yours. Like, nope, we're doing this. This one's more fun.
We can bake both cakes. We can.
Yeah, I was like,
and
you've read it, but like, I think the cabinet is something that, I mean, there's elements of stuff we've seen before in comics, but it just felt different. It just felt like fresh and different, and something that I was like, no, this has legs. We can really sustain this. And I just knew it was gonna be so fun to write, because David and I just always laugh when we talk, and we're just having fun. I'm like, this is gonna be so much more fun to write than like a straight down the line horror story. And yeah, that's how it happened. And it took from that point 4 years for it to 4.5 years, I think, for it to actually go to the printer. So yeah, very long, slow journey, but worth it. It's been worth it.
Is that a mixture of writing it and getting it over to Image and things like that in the pandemic, or was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that, and then also Dave's Blood for Dust going into like production, and then like I was on Ripple Effects. That deal came through, so then I had to switch and focus on that because I was writing and coloring all of it. So yeah, it was just really it was the pandemic, a schedule thing, and life really. But it was like we always kept pushing it forward. It just kind of always kept moving down until like the perfect time happened about 2 years ago, where it just like, okay, we're doing this. Let's go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like when you see two writers on a book, sometimes you had David, your title's you're a screenwriter. Like, you actually like write scripts and things like that.
I do.
And you write comics, Jordan. But when you have two writers on there, sometimes I get a little apprehensive, like, okay, this is going to be like extremely written. Like, it's going to be like speech bubbles to no tomorrow, things like that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, you immediately squash that the first two pages have zero speech bubbles in it. I'm like, right off the bat, they're like, nope, it's visual right now. We're just gonna we're gonna show you what you want to see, and so on and so forth. And then when you get through it, the whole book is balanced in that sense. Like the artist's interpretation of things, and then there's the bubbles and all that stuff. Like, it's definitely well put there. And Jordan, you lettered it, is that correct?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I lettered it.
Okay. So it's just kind of funny, because I do think that there is this ability. There's certain writers, and those who know me, and I'm not going to call out people on the podcast, but there's certain writers where I'm like, you just stop writing, let write notes and let your artists do some work, because like, come on, I'm tired of writing. I read novels too. Let me read novels and let me read comic books. I want a difference.
And to David's credit, he being so visual and going from art school, like that's always my stance, is you're here for the visuals. This is a comic book. Like, I can write a novel or a prose short story if you want text. So like, my mindset is always get out of the way of the artist. And if it can be said without a speech bubble, great. I remember when I bought the first volume of Saga, Brian K. Vaughan has like a section, where he's just writing about the process in the back. And I read it years ago, and he's like, my goal is to never exceed 11 speech bubbles a page. And it's like, you start when you know that, and you start going through Saga, you're like, holy shit, like, he never does. Like, maybe a few times he does, but it's like he lets the art breathe and do the work, and like, that's what comics should be. And luckily David is like fully in that camp. And when you have someone as incredible as Chiara, it's like, then I'm lettering it, and I'll email Dave and be like, I think we can cut this and this just to show more art. And he's always for it. He's like, yeah, get it out of there, like, do this. And like, he's proactively rewriting stuff for it to like be a smaller bubble. So yeah, we know visuals are the heroes in comics, but especially with Chiara, it's like, man, we got to let her just keep flexing on every single page. So that's our goal. And I'm glad you picked up on that.
It shows the team. And I do think that it's a effortless read. And that's one of the things you want also, is you don't want to struggle and get, was reading a book recently. I got an advanced copy of, and I'm like 3/4 of the way through, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I feel like I'm working way too hard at this right now,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I
Yeah.
gotta get over it. And there's been comics like that too. There's also been comics the opposite way. It's like, okay, I get through it, I'm like, I'm so confused, and then you get to it, you go back to the panel, you're like, oh, I was supposed to see something that the person was holding or whatever it may be, and I get lost in that sense too. And this balances really, really well. Was this who scripted it? Like, was it something that you guys worked together on, or was this like someone's role?
So yeah,
This was Dave. Yeah, Dave scripted.
and yeah, I mean, we both did it together. Really, what Jordan was talking about previously, where he was going through his like EGOT run within comics with Ripple Effects, which that's like a haul. I mean, you worked really hard on your promotional circuit for Ripple
Yeah.
Effects.
Yeah.
So during that time is when the cabinet started to come more into realization. Before that, we had tons and tons of great just story narrative breaking sessions, stuff like that. And a lot of the fun influences, a lot of what 90s influences, film influences. We've had those conversations to no available, but it just sort of worked out that at that point I was the one that was able to start the drafts. And the Brian K. Vaughan page that you read, Jordan told me that. Like he gave me this like sort of small set of like, yo, because I've never written for comics before. And he was like, let's just shoot for this type of stuff. Like, and that was one of them was like no more than 11. And I think we did some other things that to start, we like to break panels, we like to try to get 20 panels. I mean, like, Tyler Boss and Matthew Rosenberg, like when they go for like the 32 panels, that stuff is just so awesome. But we try to be like, okay, let's just see what we need to work with for Chiara Raimondi, our artist. Let's just see how she operates within certain panel structures. So I think at first we were just sort of saying like, 5 to 9 panels, 11 bubbles. Let's see what we can do. And so yeah, I scripted it and then I'd send it to Jordan and Jordan would rewrite it or give notes. And a lot of times the stuff that you're talking about, less text, less dialogue. It was sort of like, this is a great little piece of dialogue, but maybe we could split that into just a visual panel. So I think it was really great teamwork within that, where I was doing the typing on the keys, but I had to get a professional opinion or else it would be like, one of those comics that all of a sudden you have one whole page of text that's just on like a letterhead, but it's really just a splash.
And that's what I was talking about. Like that there's
We
comics out there and they haven't released in the past couple of years that it's like the opening page was like, I want this comic book issue to be 57 pages long, but I can't because I'm not allowed to. So here is an entire page that takes the place of 30 of those pages. And it's like, well, then that's not what I want.
Jordan was sort of like my pit crew for those drafts. He was sort of telling me like, Jesus, I don't know NASCAR at all. I don't know why I'm going into racing here, but I'm going
you rode yourself into a hole here.
All right. I'm literally going off of watching Cars 1, 2, and 3 with my kids. But like literally, Jordan's the one that's telling me like who's drafting off of me and what turn to take and when to pit and when to stop. And I mean, it's ridiculously necessary to have that, or else I think it would not be the successful read that I'm so glad that you found it to be.
Yeah. And I think it's great. I think there's a team effort. I mean, I work in the brewing industry, like I mentioned a little bit off a recording here, and other people know who listen to this podcast is in the brewing industry as a whole, we're a collaborative of people. If we're missing an ingredient and someone else has it, someone will drop it off and borrow it. If we do beers together, we collaborate with other breweries, we collaborate with other companies and people. We did a beer last year with Daniel Kraus, the New York Times bestselling author, about his new book Whalefall. So there's all these different collaborative things in it, and that's what I love about the fact that I'm in both worlds, the beer industry and the comic book industry, is like talking to people like you who it's proven that a team works really well as long as the people understand each other and get each other. And that leads me to your artists. How did that connection come into, like, how did, obviously you mentioned, Jordan, you didn't color this. Was there a purpose to that? Was there a reason why you didn't color it?
Yeah, that purpose is Chiara Raimondi being just incredible, we knew we needed artists, and we knew we needed an artist that could really capture emotion, because as David mentioned, we were really pulling speech bubbles and pulling captions. And when you do that, you have to have an artist that can say all the subtext on the surface level of the faces, which is incredibly hard to do. I think that's the hardest thing for an artist, you know, like explosions, splash pages, awesome. But like, how do they handle two people talking over a coffee, right? That's where you tell how good an artist is. So we found Chiara on Instagram, just searching hashtag sample page, and she popped
sequential
up.
pages. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, sequential pages. She was still in art school. I think she was 24. And she really didn't have a ton of sequential work, but we're like, well, at the very least, she would be great for covers. Let's reach out to her, see if she's interested. She was. David typed up some character descriptions for Ovni and Trent and the Blackguard, sent it over, and like we like nearly passed out when we got those, which are in the bonus pages of the issues. You'll see those are that original art. And then we gave her, I think, 6 pages to just see how she handled sequential pages. How is she going to handle the camera? You know, composition. That's the other big thing with a comic artist. Like, how do you crop each panel? How do you make them interesting? And she just. I remember she sent through.
You're speechless.
We literally
were speechless.
And I think all I did was I called David. And I was like, this is now an Image comic. I was like, I told him immediately. I'm like, she is now has made the cabinet an Image comic, because we knew she wanted in. We knew she wanted in. And she worked us into her school schedule, you know, and at that point, I think we worked with her for almost a full year before, maybe a year and a half before we even got the thumbs up from Image. And it was great because like we could get to know how to work with her. And when I saw her color work, I'm like, I can't beat this. Like, well, and you know, and she's drawing with those colors in mind too, you know, so it's just like, that's her process. And like, okay, great. So we hit the jackpot. And like, I've said this before, I say it every time, but you know, like everyone bills, this is her first American comic. Like she's never had an American comic before. And like the fact that her first American comic is an Image comic really is a testament to her, how brilliant she is. And on top of it, she is the nicest and kindest and sweetest and most hardworking person in the world. And we're just, you know, so lucky to have her involved.
Yeah, hashtag blessed for sure, because that's how we found her. And, you know, on top of that, you mentioned her age. She is sort of a wonderkind within that. But, you know, I'm in my early 30s. Jordan's in his late 20s.
I wish.
But we're set in the 90s. And here we are throwing out references like Clarissa Explains It All and Saved by the Bell. And we're throwing out like Reebok pumps. And we're throwing this out to a young artist in her 20s in Italy, and she knew what those were. And so like our souls sort of like our fandom souls sort of melded right away, where I was super worried. I was like, yo, we have, you know, an Italian artist, and maybe Clarissa Explains It All never aired in Italy. You know, and we just don't know. And but luckily she has that sort of, I'm going to call it an older soul. It has nothing to do with age, but just like a time specific soul. So when we started talking about that stuff and she knew what it was and would send us pictures back, we're like, oh my God, how did you know this? So it's just so cool when that stuff happens, not only because her art is brilliant, but also because she stepped into our geekdom full stride and just like ready to rumble within our like odd fandom, you know, realms. So we were really, like, again, blessed that she came on board. And
I like how you said it too. I mean, you could imagine, Jordan, like having someone color that's that good at it makes it a little bit easier for you not to do it. You're like, okay, exactly. Just take it off my hands. It's fine. I can work on other duties here. I'll you can focus on that. That's pretty nice on that. And I you still want to color, I'm guessing. I mean, in future projects and things like that. Like, obviously, you're still interested in doing stuff like that, or is it now you're like, oh, I'm done, no more coloring for me?
No, I
did you ever want to color?
That's a good question.
Frankly, I never wanted to color. I always have done it on all of my books, all 5 of my books, except the cabinet is the first one I haven't colored, because I always had to do it to save money. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, I can pay a colorist, or I can just do it myself to save money. If I had time to do it, I would certainly keep doing it. It is very therapeutic and it's very fun for me. And I love creating palettes and all that stuff. I mean, you're a designer, like it's very fun. Just put on a podcast and color. But yeah, it's at these days, the more I color, the less I can write. And that's like what I truly love. So yeah, I think the coloring will start to drop off and that's okay.
It's going to get taken over by your lettering because
thank you.
You were talking earlier, Justin, about just sort of, the narrative structure and narrative collaboration. And it's been really, really great for me to also then work with the letterer, who's also one of the writers, because I obviously, as a casual reader, people don't realize the importance of lettering and the importance of placement of bubbles and stems and all that stuff. But as you get more and more into it, it's such another narrative level, right? Where it's like, if that is not on point, it's going to pop out and throw you off the narrative or throw you out of that conversation. So it's been really great to work with Jordan on that too. And also, I think you might get more lettering work, Jordan.
I think so too. We've had a few people ask, like, who's the letterer?
I know.
I was like, I don't know. Good question. I don't know. I don't
find that out. I'll look into it for you. I'll get back to you.
Let me know. But I mean, Justin, you're a designer. Like lettering, I feel like, I always say is the offensive lineman of comics. Like, you only notice lettering when it's bad. And when lettering is bad, it destroys a page. It'll destroy the art and everything. So it's like, you got to nail lettering. That's what I always say.
Sorry, just because. Oh, go ahead, Justin.
Well, the lettering part is some of the best people that have had conversations or people that liked my episodes on here have been with letterers, because they completely forget sometimes that that's even a thing. Like, some people don't even understand it. Some people are just, obviously. In this case, it's outside the norm because you are a writer, Jordan, and the letterer.
Yeah.
So yes, did you also write the words in the book? Yes, you did. So it's not. There is a crossover there, but and then some of my favorite podcasts that I've listened to from other podcast hosts and creators I've listened to have been letterers. It's just a fascinating thing to be like. There's just so much more that goes involved in it than you even think about it. And there's 7 good ones in the entire world.
I know.
Like really, really good letterers. It's like there's only a handful of them. And a 7-figure. I guess that's not, but you know what I mean.
Totally. And speaking of the number 7, while I was writing, I think I was doing the rough draft on issue 3 or 4, and Jordan took a couple of weeks finding out the perfect font size, and we literally talked between 7.5 and something else, right, Jordan?
7, it was 7.5 point or 7, and
exactly. And and he tried all these different kerns and all, that's the extent of my font knowledge right there. But serifs, there we go. Those are the 2 words I know. But he tried everything, and he'd print them out specifically to spec of the issue size that we're going to get, and he put them up on his walls, and we talk about them. He sent me pictures, and I mean, it took us 2 or 3 weeks, not us. It took Jordan 2 or 3 weeks to really figure out the perfect style and font and size, for the book. And I think, man, most people just don't know that goes on behind the scenes at all.
Yeah. And again, like Jordan, you said it, you shouldn't, not that you shouldn't, but if you don't notice it, then it's good in a sense. There is a small portion when you see, I've seen certain, I actually have, I used to have it on the wall. I took it down, but DC Hopkins lettered Noctera issue. There's a 2-page spread with a truck flying by, and it says "vroom" down the side of the truck, and I'm like, okay, that's noticeable, but in a really good way. That's a very noticeable page. But most of the time, you shouldn't notice it. It's a very blocky, a very chunky thing, and you noticing it, you're not supposed to, and so on and so forth. It blends together in that sense. And I will say that up until recently, I didn't read anything on my phone, like social media, text messages, phone calls, all that stuff. If I read digitally, it's on my iPad. And every once in a while I read on my computer screen because I get a PDF of something and I'm like, oh, I might as well read it here. The lettering was big enough for me not to have to zoom. I'm 37 and I still didn't have to zoom on my phone because I was waiting in the doctor's office being like, hey, I'll read issue 1 again. And I was scrolling through and I was like, I don't have to zoom this. This is nice. So there's that too. So you have that ability because there are people that read this. There are people who buy this comic book who solely read it on their phone. Like they're not even going to hold an issue.
Totally.
They're not going to like see it on their iPad, that they're literally going to read it on their phone, which is crazy in my opinion. But like
Totally. And that was like, that was another thing we were really testing for, what David mentioned, because I think to your earlier point, that's another trick of writers that aren't self-editing as much as they should. They're like, oh, we'll just use 5-point type. And it's like, okay, in the printed issue, it's okay. But then you read it on an iPad on a phone and I'm zooming in. I'm like, oh, like, don't want that either.
And simple things like, we have an extremely limited amount of dual page spreads, because dual page spreads on your iPad get effed up, I mean, and because all of a sudden you're reading portrait and you're like, this is great, shit. And then you're like, and
you're like, are you supposed to read across? Am I supposed to read down? I can't figure this out. And
and it shouldn't be. All creators out there, don't change your expression of the medium for who's going to read what on what. That's what we had to keep on reminding ourselves. But like, sometimes we're like, okay, does this, we also made sure to just do 22 pages of story, like classic comic book length pages per story, also to keep the price down and to keep the trade price down for everybody going forward. But we had to keep on asking, like, does this need a dual page spread? Yes, in that floppy, this will look the best. And that's where we want it to look the best. But we had to have those conversations where we're like, okay, can we tell this visually some other way to not get that dual page to, maybe appease the younger audience, because we do have a very YA leaning angle that are going to be just on that phone, And
I'm a huge floppy comic collector anyway. Like I do a lot of floppies, and then I do collect trades. Most recently, and the people give me crap at the comic book store, I collect the trades that my pull quotes have been used on. And they're like, that seems very.
Why wouldn't you do that?
So, but so I have trades in that sense, but I do move mostly floppy, and so I just don't even get the idea of all the way from a floppy to a phone is like a far. And I sound like an old crotchety old man here, but like it's so much different of experience in my opinion.
It's really different, and and I mean, we created this for a floppy as well, and maybe we'll put 5 or 6 of your pull quotes on our trade, so you have to buy 5 or 6 issues.
There you go.
Well, the funny thing is, the first time I noticed that, I was reading an advanced copy, Mad Cave Studios Legacy of Violence from Cullen Bunn of issue volume 2. I was reading the advanced copy, and I get to the last page, I'm laying in bed, I'm on my iPad, and I scroll the last page, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And then I went back, and there was like 6 trades before this that came out that I had no idea, because no one lets you know. They just come out, and I'm like, well, I didn't collect the floppies, so I'm not gonna go buy the trades, and now I have there's like 15 of them, but like, I can't let's get in my head. Someone wanted me to sign one the other day. I was like, no, that is not happening. I'm sorry. That is not happening. It's the same thing. I don't sign my cans either, because I'm like, I don't know. It seems weird to me, because it's like, I don't know. I just don't.
I don't know. I'd support it signing.
You can do that. You should.
I have other signed cans, but not.
Only after you chug it in front of me. You have to you got to shotgun it, and then you can sign it.
You sign it. Yeah, exactly. But no, because I've designed cans for comic book conventions. We did one with Terrifier, the guys from Terrifier.
The movie?
So yes, David Howard Thornton and Damien Leone. We did a beer called Terrify PA.
Nice.
And so he had signed that one. I did done those ones. I did one with the guys from Clerks, and so we had people from Clerks sign that. But like, I'm not signing my own. I'm sorry.
Are you a Terrifier fan?
I am a Terrifier fan.
Dude, me too. I'm extremely disturbed each time I watch Terrifier, but I'm still a Terrifier fan.
Terrifier fan. So, and I hadn't been. Like, people will know this, and people talked on the podcast with me about horror stuff. It wasn't until about 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, that I even cared about the horror industry, like at all. Like horror comics, horror books, or anything. And I was like, eh. So all of the horror movies, like Halloween, all of those are like 5 years old to me, because I never saw.
But isn't that the best? Isn't that the best when you're introduced to something? I mean, this is when I came back to comics. I was like, whoa, I have 25 years to catch up on. And that's sometimes the best as somebody in our age group, where we're like, wow, look at all this discovery and education and new stories to unfold and uncover. Which is the best. So it's almost better sometimes to be a latent fan. And like, you're from Maine. We all know this Mr. King. We all understand
he's like down the street from me. He lives down the street from me.
So it was inevitable. At one point in your life, you were going to have horror seep into your life.
I felt horrible because I read Salem's Lot in October for the first time. It was my first Stephen King book I ever read. So it was like, I was like, oh, Stephen King's great. He's awesome. And people were like, what do you like about him? I'm like, I don't know. he lives there. I
Yeah.
knew him. I know
You
of him.
have,
Obviously, but
dude, you have the same zip code as him. That's all you got to say.
Yeah.
And
I'm like,
now you
he
can
You're
read.
saying you live in Derry. That's
Yes,
what we're
exactly.
taking
Yeah.
away. You live in Derry,
We-
Maine. Got it.
I'm like, yeah, Stephen King, that guy, he has Dark Tower comic books, right? They're like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Dark Tower, he came with the comic book, right? The Stand comic book, no.
Yeah, totally.
But no, yeah, so horror to me has always been thinking, but like horror comic books now are like, I don't know. I was always a big two guy in horror and the elements of horror and mixing that in. The cabinet with the throwbacks of the 90s you mentioned earlier with your artist being younger. That feel to me was awesome too. Our number one beer at Orono Brewing Company here in Maine is Tubular IPA that has a very strong Saved by the Bell theme.
Nice.
And so
Nice.
like that aspect of it was like obviously hit home with me there too.
Great.
And so I was really excited about that when I read it. But yeah, the book is beautiful. It's well written. All that stuff is fun. And so I'm guessing, David, you're writing the screenplay for it right now, right?
Well, yeah. Should we do
Well,
an exclusive? We were at WonderCon together. We were at WonderCon together, and we were talking about next steps. And we were like, yeah, we should probably write this into something more. And so we'll just leave it at that. We'd love to, but the biggest thing is that we want this to be a great comic for comics. And so the fun thing that we've been doing for the longest time is just developing more and more arcs. This world is really, really big, and we've just scratched the surface. And obviously, every comic creator that probably comes on this would love to keep on scratching and scratching and scratching. Unfortunately, the industry is a little bit tighter for that right now, but we have volume 2 already sort of planned out and ready to roll. And so if people keep checking us out, we had a good solid launch, and I know when our trade comes out in October, if that's solid, we're going to come back and we're going to keep on doing more, because we'd love to just keep on telling stories via panels and pages and page turns and sweet bubbles and stems, right? So
Totally.
that's still the main goal.
Exactly. And so you have issue 1 debuted on February 14th, and then issue 3 comes out the day this
9 days.
Sweet.
The
day will actually come out today. So when people are in their cars, they're getting their podcast going, they're to make sure on the way home from work, you stop by your LCS and you pick up a copy of issue 3. And I hope they're sold out of issues 1 and 2, but if you're lucky, they're not. And then you can grab issues 1 and 2 and catch up to where you are now. And then if not, you can wait. But issue 4 comes out on my birthday, so there's that.
Awesome.
We planned it just for that. Yeah.
Now it's gonna be delayed. Watch. It's gonna be a printing or shipping error.
Publisher,
May 21st now.
I got that to Image last Thursday, so it's on the printer. It's on the printer if it's not your best birthday.
But we all know you guys work in the comic book industry here too. We all know that a lot of these things are arbitrary and dates are not actually set in stone. But the trade does come in. Some people trade weight, which is I always say that as long as someone's reading your book and buying your book, buy it the way you can. Do not steal it. But
if you're buying it from a LCS, that's go ahead. Like, you want to be a trade reader of the cabinet, thumbs up. Just buy it from your store.
And honestly, if you don't have an LCS, one thing I've actually been on to, and I'm going to say this now, full disclosure, is I do get a kickback now when people do this. But when you click on the link on our website to buy the book, it goes to bookshop.org for the trade. But that also supports local bookstores. So it's not an LCS, not a comic book store, but still a bookstore you get it from. And that way, those people can actually get your business instead of other places. But
I buy all of my Mistress novels, all of my novels that I cheat on comics with through Bookshop, because they it's just a huge independent bookstore network. Highly recommend
you pick a bookstore and it goes and it supports them as well and things like that too. So I do that now. I used to do a link through Amazon affiliates and things like that, but Bookshop has it. Why not do it that way? So I'll get a small kickback if people buy it, but that way at least local bookstores do it too, which is awesome.
As we're talking indie really fast, there is a indie app, 2 comic book creators, and I don't know them personally, but Omnibus, the cabinet is on Omnibus, and I think that's sort of the best place to purchase it digitally, because they're just independent. They're not Comixology, if that place even exists anymore.
It's such an arbitrary. It's basically Amazon, Kindle, something, whatever.
Exactly.
The founders and creators of Omnibus came on a while back to talk about Omnibus.
So, you know them
awesome.
better than I do.
They're awesome. Place to buy digitally and stuff like that. If you're going to buy it digitally, for sure. And honestly, yes, pay. You guys want to you're doing this because you're going to get paid to do this as well. But read the book. So if you have to borrow someone's single issues before you can buy the trade, whatever, that's the way that's cool. But read the book, because people are going to read at least the first issue, because I guarantee you, once you read the first issue, you're going to want to buy the rest of them. That's my, there you go. Put that on the back.
Seal of approval. Thanks, Justin. I appreciate
on the
it.
back of that thing. But that's awesome. So I'm glad that you guys came on and were able to talk about it a little bit. I don't know if there's anything else you guys wanted to chat about the book itself, but it's wonderful. I highly recommend it. We have a review up on our website as well if anybody wants to read that. But you know, any other tidbits about the book that you guys want to throw out there? Or?
Man, probably. I'll just go really fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Follow our artist Chiara Raimondi on Instagram because we waxed her car a lot on here. She is really amazing. She's really great, and her work not only speaks for itself in our book, but yeah, give her a follow on Instagram. Oki Ren, right? OCH.
Yep.
RY.
You go find her on the image page too. You go to any cabinet post on the image Instagram account. You'll find all three of us.
Find her because she wasn't able to be here, but her work speaks for itself. So
yes, exactly. And she's probably catching up on Saved by the Bell episodes right now.
I think so too. Zach
I think it's in Italy. It's live right now, right? They're actually airing it now in Italy.
Yeah, finally got there.
Finally got it. No. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll just say as for like the book, read the review, but also like we just try to have as much fun as we can every issue. So if you want like a fun, fast-paced adventure read, set in 91, check it out. Someone once said we were kind of like John Hughes meets the Supernatural, like a Supernatural John Hughes movie, and I was like, that's a great comment. I love that. So yeah,
that needs like the cover of the trade needs to have that on there. Like what was it? Brian Michael Bendis on Stray Dogs was like, all dogs go to heaven meets Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
And I was like, and that was on the cover. I'm like, that should sell it to anybody. So yes, that quote should also sell it to anybody. I would agree with that for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's amazing. And then Ripple Effects obviously is available out there too. So grab Ripple Effects, everybody. I had that on here. And then David, you have a movie coming out, don't you?
I do. Yeah. It's called Blood for Dust. It's coming out April 19th. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, it stars Kit Harington, Josh Lucas from Yellowstone, Ethan Embry, Stephen Dorff, Scoot McNairy. Got a great cast, and it's sort of it's a crime thriller set in the 90s as well, up in Montana, and it's sort of Breaking Bad meets Fargo. So yeah, if you're a film fan, definitely check that out. Way darker.
What range? I was just thinking though, like look at that range.
Yeah, I work from dark, depressing, gritty, like clinically insane to fun, light Clarissa Explains It All, Saved by the Bell adventure series. So yeah, I work the spectrum. So
that's how you do it. Yeah. And I'm gonna read. I haven't read. Full disclosure. I haven't read Ripple Effects, but I want to read it now. And Jordan, let's get you back on at some point just to talk about Ripple Effects. That
great? Yeah, that sounds awesome. Great.
I'm down with that for sure. Yeah, we won't invite David though. David, you can come if you want. Just sit in the corner.
Yeah,
I'll eat ice cream. I'll eat ice cream like some of your past guests.
You eat ice cream.
Popcorn and ice cream. You can play producer in the corner.
Yeah, I will. I'll totally do that.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you two taking time out of your day to come on, talk The Cabinet. It's available now from Image Comics and Syzygy. Is that how you say it? Syzygy publishing?
Correct. You nailed it.
And so a couple issues are already out. And if you're waiting for the third issue, it comes out on April 10th when this episode drops. And the trade comes out in October if you're waiting for the trade. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out.
Dude, Justin, thanks for giving us the space to talk and chat and go off on many tangents. Most appreciated.
Yeah, it was a blast.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your time, and until we see you again. Again, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.